is and will be life-changing and life-saving for so
Minister.
many.
Your time has expired. Senator Duniam.
Thank you, President. Indeed. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Employment and Workplace Relations, Senator Watt. I refer the Minister to two statements the department put out on Tuesday night saying they did not actually rely on the website of a modern-day spiritual healer when calculating the cost of a bargaining consultant. Is it just an amazing coincidence that the figure of $175 an hour that his department uses in the report is the figure mentioned on the modern-day spiritual healers website, which the department provides as a reference for in the regulatory impact statement? Will the minister take responsibility for this appalling error?
Thank you, Senator Duniam. Senators, I don't want a repeat of the shouting that we had yesterday. The question's been asked. I'm going to call the minister in a moment, and I expect him to be heard in respectful silence. Minister.
Thank you, President, and thank you, Senator Duniam, for the question. Well, another day and we have the opposition continuing to clutch at straws to find any reason possible to stop workers in this country from getting a pay rise. They will do anything to stop talking about workers getting a pay rise. They will stop anything, do anything to stop small businesses and medium-sized businesses being able to participate in a system that exists under their current legislation to deliver pay rises for their workers, a more simple industrial relations system and higher productivity for small businesses.
Minister Watt, please resume your seat. Senator Duniam.
Point of order, President. On relevance, I mean, the question was pretty clear around the source of the information and whether the minister will take responsibility.
Thank you, Senator Duniam. I will draw the minister to the question. Minister Watt.
Thank you, President. Now, as I say, this is a continuation of what we saw yesterday from the opposition, trying to find any possible reason, whether it be websites or people, consultants. What this is actually about is one of the false claims that the opposition has been making this week, which is their claim that it will cost small businesses $14,000 to participate in multi-employer bargaining and medium-sized employers to pay even more. Now, you'll be surprised to hear that that's actually wrong, because the way the laws are structured allows for small businesses to have access to the cooperative workplaces stream, so that if a small business wants to go and engage a consultant, whoever that might be, to assist them with their results, then that's a matter for them. But what I think you'll find is that most small businesses are members of chambers of commerce, are members of industry associations, who would actually go and do the negotiations on their behalf, and then a small business would have the option of choosing to be part of that or not. Of course, if their workers would like to be a part of that, then the majority of those workers have to go through a process to support that option. They also have to go to the Fair Work Commission to get approval to do so. So this
Minister Watt, please resume your seat. Senator Duniam.
Point of order on relevance again, Madam President. This business around everything other than the answer we asked for.
I will draw the minister back to the question, and I would ask those on my left to listen in silence. Thank you, Senator McKenzie. Minister Watt.
Thank you, President. So, as I say, what the opposition is saying is just plain wrong, and I'll keep telling you why.
Thank you, Senator Watt. Your time has expired. I'm waiting. You have a senator on his feet. Senator Duniam.
Thank you, President. Unbelievable, but ACCI, in terms of chambers, released information yesterday showing the cost of a bargaining consultant is actually closer to $438 rather than $175 the figure uses on its data, making costs for small businesses higher than $20,000.
Order.
Is the minister going to ask his department to fix the regulatory impact statement, or does the minister stand by the calculation of the modern-day spiritual healer he references in his report?
I'm not going to call the minister until there's silence, and those interjections are disorderly. Senator Ayres. Minister Watt.
Thank you, President. I understand that this has given the opposition a lot of amusement this week, but we don't think it's an amusing situation that for 10 years workers have had to get by without a pay rise. We don't think it's an amusing situation.
Senator Watt, please resume your seat. Senator McGrath, I have asked for silence, and the minute the minister got to his feet, you were shouting louder than the minister, who has a microphone on. I will ask again for there to be silence so that we can all hear the minister's answer. Minister Watt.
Thank you, President. Now, I haven't seen that report from ACCI, but if they are putting that sort of information out, then they are wrong and they are misleading their members. Because what ACCI know, what the opposition should know is that small businesses will have access to the cooperative workplace.
Minister Watt, I asked at the start of question time for there not to be a repeat of the disorder that was in the chamber yesterday during question time, and immediately we have the disorder back again. I'm going to ask for about the fourth time for members on my left in particular to listen to the answers in silence. Minister Watt.
Thank you, President. ACCI should know, because they've been involved in these discussions, that small businesses will have access to the cooperative workplaces stream.
Please resume your seat. And thank you, Senator Cash. You immediately started shouting again after I'd asked for silence. I'd asked for silence and some respect to the rulings of the chair. Minister Watt.
Thank you, President. In fact, ACCI is one of the organisations that will have every ability under this legislation to prepare a template agreement for all small businesses to opt into under the cooperative workplaces stream. So is ACCI telling us that not only they oppose a wage rise, oh shock horror, ACCI have always supported pay rises, haven't they, but are they saying they're not prepared to play their role as an employer group to design a template agreement that small businesses can sign up to? That would be a very interesting offer to their members.
Minister Watt, please resume your seat. Senator Duniam.
Slamming ACCI, great way to go. Will the minister put out a new RIS?
Sorry, Senator, on a point of order, Senator Wong.
That's debate. It's not the question. Can you please call them to the question?
Senator Duniam, I've called you for your second supplementary.
Okay, thank you very much, President. Refer to the minister's characterisation in the negative of ACCI in his last answer. Will the government put out a new RIS fixing their calculations?
Senator Duniam, I've got Senator Wong on her feet.
Again, point of order. That is commentary. If he wants to give a speech, he can do so later.
You've got a plethora of people, but I'm going to take your point of order, Senator Birmingham.
Thank you, President.
Sorry, Senator Birmingham, not until your side is quiet. You have your leader on his feet. Senator Birmingham.
Order from the Leader of the Government in the Senate. It would make a mockery of the concept of supplementary questions if a senator were not able to commence a supplementary question by referring directly to what the minister had just said in the preceding answer.
Thank you,
so Senator Wong's point of order has no basis, President.
Please resume your seat. Order. Order. Senator Wong and Senator Birmingham. I will note it has been the custom in this place for senators from both sides, well, all over the parliament, to make comments leading into their first and second supplementary. So if we're going to call it to order, it's for order for everyone. Senator Duniam, second supplementary.
Thank you for your ruling, President. And having made that point twice, will the government put out a new RIS fixing their calculations and referencing errors with the spiritual healer, or does the minister contend the RIS is right?
Minister Watt.
I'll tell you what's right about the RIS, and I'd like to read from the RIS, which says the significant benefits of being covered by an enterprise agreement and the costs that may be associated with remaining covered by a modern award outweigh the additional cost for businesses to engage with the new multi-enterprise bargaining streams. You forgot to read that bit of the RIS, didn't you? You forgot to read the bit that says that businesses—
Senator Watt, please resume your seat. Order. Minister Watt, please continue.
Thank you, President. Senator Duniam also forgot to read the bit of the RIS that says that businesses are often covered by multiple modern awards, which can be complicated and difficult to interpret. An enterprise agreement enables an employer to have one industrial instrument which applies to a business, which simplifies their workplace relations arrangements. Wouldn't it be a terrible thing to have an industrial relations system which provides a simple method for small businesses to participate in an agreement that is negotiated?
Once again, order. Minister Watt. This is question time. If you wish to make a contribution, there are plenty of other times to make the contribution throughout the week. The question has been asked. I've called the minister to answer it, and I expect him to be heard in silence. Minister Watt.
Thank you, President. So it is interesting that the opposition chooses to cherry-pick from the RIS but leaves out all the bits that talk about the benefits to business, the benefits to workers, the benefits to the economy of pursuing this, and we make no apologies for doing things to give workers a pay rise and small business simplicity.
Senator Bilyk. Senator Bilyk.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister for Women, Senator Gallagher. Ahead of the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women on the 25th of November and the 16 days of activism that follow, can the minister update the Senate on the importance of addressing gender-based violence?
Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, President. I thank Senator Bilyk for the question and for raising this matter today. Tomorrow is the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women, which is an important day for us to acknowledge one of the widespread human rights abuses that exist worldwide. This day also commences the 16 days of activism. We mark this day as part of a global call to action to end violence against women. Worldwide, 1 in 3 women have experienced physical or sexual violence, mostly by an intimate partner. This is even higher when including sexual harassment. And this statistic is mirrored by the Australian experience, where 1 in 3 women have experienced violence by an intimate partner. 1 woman dies every 10 days in Australia at the hands of her former or current partner, and 1 in 2 women in Australia have experienced sexual harassment in their lifetime. First Nations women are 11 times more likely to be killed due to experiencing family violence than non-Indigenous women, and are 34 times more likely to be hospitalised as the result of this violence. We know that this violence is compounded for women from some backgrounds who also experience other forms of discrimination like ableism, homophobia and racism, and that it just doesn't have a human cost. It also costs the economy at $26 billion a year, half of which is borne by the victims themselves. This violence against women and children is not inevitable, and we can and must take action to end it. It's why we're working with states and territories on a collective goal to end violence against women and children in a generation through the National Plan to End Violence Against Women and Children 2022 to 2032 that was released on the 17th of October this year and agreed by the Commonwealth states and territories. President, together we can take action to achieve an Australia and a world where all women and girls live free from fear and violence.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Bilyk. First supplementary.
Thank you, Minister, for that response. Can you outline what the Albanese government is doing to address gender-based violence for us?
Minister.
Thank you, President. Thanks, Senator Bilyk, for the supplementary. The government is already taking action to support the National Plan. Through the National Plan, $1.7 billion of investment through the recent budget to support initiatives under the National Plan, including funding for consent and respectful relationships education, and 500 frontline service and community workers to support women and children experiencing family, domestic and sexual violence. That was a policy designed and advocated for by my colleague Senator McAllister in the previous term of parliament. We've also introduced paid family and domestic violence leave. We're implementing the recommendations, all of them from Respect at Work report, including legislating a positive duty on employers to provide workplaces free of harassment. We're investing $1.6 billion from the returns of the Housing Australia Future Fund, including to support women escaping DV and older women at risk of homelessness. And we're also developing a standalone First Nations national plan for family safety under the leadership of Minister Burney and Minister Rishworth.
Senator Bilyk, second supplementary.
Thank you. Minister, can you outline what role we all have to play in achieving an Australia free from gender-based violence?
Minister.
Thank you, President, and thank you, Senator Bilyk. While we are proud to be investing record Commonwealth funding to end gender-based violence, we know we cannot end it and do it alone. The National Plan to End Violence Against Women and Children provides a blueprint for our collective action and outlines the shared role we all have to play in ending violence against women. It's a joint initiative. The National Plan also highlights that everyone must play a role in ending this violence across government, communities, workplace, sporting organisations, business and the media. If we all pull in the same direction, pull together, change is possible. Can I also just put on the record my support and respect for all of the advocates who have been working year after year, day after day, to end violence against women and children, and to make sure that the issue of ending violence against women and children is never off the national agenda.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Henderson.
Thank you very much, Madam President. My question is to the Minister for Trade and Tourism, Senator Farrell. Minister, the tourism industry directly employed over 666,000 Australians in the June quarter of this year, many of them being small business operators. Under Labor's extreme IR changes, could a cafe on the Mornington Peninsula employing 20 staff be compelled into multi-employer bargaining alongside a large hotel in the Mornington Peninsula due to them being in the same industry and geographical location?
Minister Farrell. Thank you. Senator Wong.
Just on a point of order, I have not intervened given the political context here, and I understand it's a point of order. I'm making a point of order.
Senator Henderson, I've called Senator Wong on a point of order. Resume your seat. Excuse me. Senator Henderson, I'm the President. I've called the Senator Wong to her feet. She's making the point of order and you're interjecting. Senator Wong.
Thank you. The point of order goes to whether the question is in order given where the bill is. I have not intervened to date because I understand that the policy and politics of the issue is a matter that the Senate has historically and continued to question, even when legislation is before the Senate, notwithstanding the standing orders. But I may have misheard Senator Henderson, but I thought she directly went to the legislation, in which case I would assert it is out of order in the current terms. But the way I would deal with it, because I understand the issue, Senator Birmingham, is if that is the case, I would invite her to rephrase.
Thank you, Senator Wong. Senator Birmingham.
President, just before you rule on the point of order, I do note that indeed on Tuesday of this week, the government themselves asked a question related to this legislation. I further note that indeed you and previous presidents have ruled broadly in relation to these questions about anticipation of Senate business, and would encourage you to uphold your and previous rulings about that breadth of questioning that is available to senators.
I'll just take some advice, Senator Birmingham, because I thought the question was not confined to Senator Farrell's area, but I'll take advice. In relation to the point of order, I'm advised that if the question went generally to policy issues, then it would be reasonable to ask Senator Farrell to answer it, but the question, in my view, did go to details because it sought a comparison under an aspect of the proposed bill that related one type of business to another type of business. So I can invite Senator Farrell to answer the broad policy nature of that question. Senator Henderson, I've got Senator Wong on her feet and then I'll come to you.
Yeah, I was simply saying we would give leave to rephrase rather than going to Senator Farrell if that is convenient to the opposition.
Thank you. So the advice from Senator Wong is she is perfectly fine if you wish to rephrase the question rather than it go to Senator Farrell, because it does go to detail. Thank you, Senator Henderson.
Thank you, Madam President. Senator Farrell, how would these changes impact on a cafe on the Mornington Peninsula employing 20 staff compared with a large hotel in the Mornington Peninsula with respect to multi-employer bargaining due to these two businesses being in the same industry and geographical location? And obviously I'm asking specifically in relation to the tourism industry.
I do believe, Senator, that is Senator Henderson, that is the same question, simply reframed, but I have Senator Wong on her feet. Okay, thank you. Senator Birmingham.
President, I would contest that in terms of the way in which rulings on these matters have been held previously, it has been clear, as I said, and Hodges states, the rule concerning anticipation is not interpreted narrowly, because if it were, it would block questions on a wide variety of subjects. Indeed, none other than former Senator John Faulkner has argued previously about the broad interpretation taken in relation to this. The senator's question relates to policies and reforms of the government. She's asking about those policies, reforms and changes. She has not referenced specific legislation either in her first go at the question nor in her rewording of the question.
Senator Wong.
In response to the Leader of the Opposition, I think the difficulty here is that the senator repeated precisely the words to which I responded, which is these changes. It's clearly the case that she is saying these changes, meaning the legislation which is before the chamber, and as such I would submit needs to be rephased to be compliant with Standing Order 73.
I am going to rule. I will seek further advice after question time, Senator Birmingham, but I think Senator Henderson, I'm speaking. Please resume your seat. Senator Henderson, I will come to you. I think, as I gave my first answer, I think if it's around the broad policy, it's at the invitation of Senator Farrell to answer, and I remain with that response, but I am happy to take further advice after question time. Senator Henderson, did you have a point of order?
I was just asking if I could be given an opportunity to rephrase in light of your further clarification.
Yes, it's perfectly fine.
Yeah, thank you. Senator Farrell, in light of the government's extreme IR policies, could a cafe on the Mornington Peninsula employing 20 staff be compelled into multi-employer bargaining alongside a large hotel in the Mornington Peninsula due to them being in the same industry and geographical location?
Thank you, Senator Henderson. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President, and I thank Senator Henderson for her question. Look, I totally reject your description of this legislation as extreme. The Labor Party went to the last. The Labor Party went to the last election saying we were going to lift the wages of Australians, and in particular low-paid Australians, and that's what this legislation does. Now, if I was a small business operating a cafe, or for that matter, a hotel in the Mornington Peninsula, I would be delighted with this legislation because I would know that for the first time in 10 years, low-paid workers will have an opportunity to lift their wages. We know from what the former leader of the government in the Senate said that no wages was a designed feature of the Liberal Party's policy. A designed feature of the Labor Party's policy is lifting the wages.
Farrell, please resume your seat. Senator Henderson.
Madam President, a point of order on direct relevance. I was asking the minister to answer the question in relation to the two businesses. Could they be compelled into multi-employer bargaining?
Thank you.
So could the minister please directly address that?
Senator Henderson. Minister Wong.
Thank you. Well, on the point of order, the question actually put a hypothetical, which also was not in order, but given the what we'd already gone through to try and get to a question previously, I didn't take a point of order on that. But it would be unsurprising if the minister answers in slightly broader terms, given you put a hypothetical to it.
Thank you, Senator Henderson. I'll remind Minister Farrell of the question, and I note that he started down that path, but probably got distracted by the disorder that was in the chamber. But Minister Farrell, please direct yourself to the question.
Now, if I was an operator in the tourism industry in the Mornington Peninsula, I'm regrettably not, but It would be a lovely place to be operating. I would be saying to all of our community, what's going to help tourism in my community? What's going to help tourism in my community? That's going to be more people coming out and coming into my cafe and coming into my hotel. And how is that going to occur? How is that going to occur? That is by lifting the wages of all of the people in that community. And as we lift the wages of those, look, I know, Senator Cash, I know you don't accept these fundamental...
Thank you, Minister. Your time has expired. Senator Henderson, first supplementary.
Minister, I take your answer to mean that these businesses could be compelled to bargain together, and I ask, under Labor's extreme IR policies, could a local winery employing 20 staff on the Bellarine Peninsula be compelled into multi-employer bargaining alongside a local pub in Portarlington, Victoria, due to being in the same industry and geographical location?
Senator Henderson, please resume your seat. Minister.
Point of order, President. I remember there is a standing order which prevents hypothetical questions. Both of these questions have been hypothetical questions, as in woulda this or woulda that, are hypothetical in nature.
Order.
I know the wage cutters over there don't like being held to standing orders.
Senator Watt, please resume your seat. Minister Birmingham, on the same point of order.
Same point of order, President. Australian businesses only wish that Labor's policies were hypothetical. The sad reality is
resume your seat. Resume your seat. Resume your seat. Resume your seat. On a point of order, Senator Gallagher.
Same point of order, President. I think if you look at Standing Order 73(1)(g) around rules for questions, it's very clear that questions that contain hypothetical matter are not in order.
Thank you. Thank you, Senators. 73(1)(g) does go to hypothetical, but the question that Senator Henderson asked was around policy, and I'm going to allow the question. Senator Henderson, I'm not quite sure if you finished your question. I think you were midway and you got sat down. So if you can ask the question again, please. And I've asked... Thank you, Senator Ayres. I'm going to reset the clock.
Thank you very much, Madam President. As I say, I take, Minister, your answer to mean that these businesses could be compelled to bargain together. And I ask, under Labor's extreme IR policies, could a local winery employing 20 staff on the Bellarine Peninsula, where I live, be compelled into multi-employer bargaining alongside a local pub in Portarlington, Victoria, due to being in the same industry and geographical location?
Thank you, Senator Henderson. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President, and I thank Senator Henderson for her supplementary question. And I totally reject you putting words into my mouth. I'm happy if you quote what I say.
Senator Cash. Senator McGrath.
As my answer, I reject the words that you're trying to put into my mouth. I also fundamentally reject your suggestion that this legislation is extreme. This is not extreme legislation. This is legislation. We told the Australian people at the last election, and that includes all of the tourism operators.
Please resume your seat. Senator Henderson.
Point of order on direct relevance. I asked the minister in relation to the compulsion between two businesses, whether they are compelled to engage in multi-employer bargaining. Could the minister address the question,
Senator
please?
Henderson, you also had a political statement at the front of that before that question, and I do believe that the minister is being relevant. Thank you, Minister. Please continue.
Thank you, President. And look, for a government, when you're in government, you totally let down the tourism industry in this country. For you now to be saying,
thank you, Minister Farrell. Your time has expired. Senator Henderson, second supplement. Order. Second supplementary.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Minister, after 2 years of COVID impacting Australia's tourism industry, when the former coalition government did so much for the tourism industry, an industry now suffering labour shortages, why is the Labor government bringing in extreme IR laws, which employers, including tourism operators in Victoria, have said will make it harder for them to employ people?
Thank you, Senator Henderson. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President, and thank you, Senator Henderson, for your second supplementary question. Are you kidding? Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? What your government did?
Minister Farrell. Order. 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 I have a senator on her feet. Thank Minister Watt. Senator Henderson.
Madam President, I'm not kidding. I'm very serious, but I would ask that the minister direct his comments through the chair.
You have a point of order. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
I'll remind the minister of the question. Order. Minister, please answer the question.
President, thank you.
Order.
It's all about Sarah.
Senator Watt.
Thank you, President, and I will direct my comments to the chair, but I will also direct them to all of those people over there who totally let down the tourism industry in this country. We're finally starting the rebuild of the tourism industry, whether it's a cafe on the Bellarine Peninsula, a hotel on the Bellarine Peninsula. We're lifting their wages and we're starting the rebuild. You left this industry for dead. You cut JobKeeper when you should have kept it going. You kicked out.
Minister Farrell.
Yes, you were giving it to all your big mates. You were giving it to your mates when you should have been giving it.
Resume your seat. Order. Order. Senator Whish-Wilson.
Thank you, President. My question is to Senator McAllister, representing the Environment Minister. In recent weeks, Australians were shocked and bloody angry when news broke.
Sorry. Yes, sorry. Senator McAllister is an Assistant Minister. Do you wish to redirect? Assistant Ministers don't take questions. I'm happy to go to Senator Pratt and come back to you if you want.
No.
You're right.
I'll just make it more broad. My question is to the Senator representing the Environment Minister.
Well, Senator Whish-Wilson, I don't know who that is, so you need to be direct.
I don't either, actually. Given Senator Farrell was on a rare moment of a role and animation, I might direct it to him.
Order.
I actually don't know, President.
Order.
Senator Wong. Okay, thank you. Yeah. Senator Wong, in recent weeks, Australians were shocked and bloody angry when news broke that the soft plastics recovery scheme run by REDcycle had collapsed, with billions of tonnes of plastic packaging being stored in warehouses rather than being recycled. Australians who were doing the right thing, taking plastic packaging back to supermarkets where it was purchased, rightly had expectations that big business and government would live up to their end of the bargain and see these plastics, which are so commonly found and dangerous in our oceans, recycled. Minister Plibersek herself expressed frustration at the news, saying it shouldn't be beyond big companies like Coles and Woolworths to come up with a viable solution to soft plastic recycling. Senator, why is it seemingly beyond these big business companies to do this, to sort out their mess, and what is your government now planning to do to hold them to account?
Thank you, Senator Whish-Wilson. Senator Wong.
Thank you, President, and thank you for the question. And I acknowledge there's quite a lot of representing ministers here, so I understand the mistake that was made. Can I just say first, we share your and the frustration of many Australians with what has occurred in the soft plastics recycling sector. I know personally in our household and in many households people who did the right thing and made sure that they put their soft plastics together in a big bag and took them down to the local supermarket in the hope that we might actually reduce the amount of soft plastics in the environment. Were very, very disappointed by the news that the financial position the industry was in, but also the lack of results. I was asked a question about why is it beyond big business. Well, I guess you'd have to ask them. What I can say is it's clear that the regulatory settings that were in place and the incentives which were in place, whether they are government or market-driven, were insufficient for that sector to work. We know that there is not just environmental but economic benefit in recycling as opposed to landfill. And knowing Ms Plibersek as I do and her determination as Environment Minister to take action on this, I've no doubt she will look very carefully at what is the best way forward. This is an issue where I would say to the industry that the Australians are clear in terms of their behaviours, what they want to do, and it would be a good thing if the market could respond to that incentive, which is people want to do the right thing.
Thank you, Senator Wong. Senator Whish-Wilson, first supplementary.
The Environment Department has said multiple times in estimates it will likely know by the end of this year whether Australia will meet our 2025 packaging waste reduction and recycling targets facilitated by the big business-led Australian Packaging Covenant. Well, it's the end of the year, Minister, and this is a significant matter of public interest, as you just mentioned. Can the government now provide to the Senate and to the Australian people an update on whether we will meet our 2025 packaging targets?
Thank you, Senator Whish-Wilson. Senator Wong.
Well, first, the senator was critical of the targets. What I understand is we're a long way from meeting them. The note I have in front of me, and I'll confirm this, is that the target of 70% of plastic packaging was set for 2025, and Australia's been stuck at 16% for 4 years. Now, I don't know if that's going to be worsened by the subsequent industry collapse or challenges that you've described. Clearly, 9 years of a coalition government who didn't want to do anything on this has meant we're a long way behind. Well, Senator Henderson, I'd like you to explain to us then why, if you set a target for 70% and announced it, why we're still stuck at 16%. I mean, the problem with the coalition is they seem to think if you announce something, it magically happens. Well, transitions and policy take a bit more work than that.
Senator Whish-Wilson, second supplementary.
Thanks, Senator. It sounds like yet another failed plastic waste reduction and recycling scheme based on what you've said. So I suppose my question is what is it going to take for your government to accept that after 25 years of repeated failures to reduce plastic packaging waste, that a voluntary approach that relies on the goodwill of big business to do the right thing doesn't work, and that you actually need to now regulate the package industry and give actual consequences for failure?
Thank you, Senator Whish-Wilson. Minister.
Senator Whish-Wilson, I come from the state of South Australia, and you might remember the arguments over, I think it was called container deposit legislation, and we ended up going it alone because, and frankly, it proved to be the right response. If I could just go through what I understand that we have done in the 6 months we've been in office. There's a $250 million investment in infrastructure to sort, process and remanufacture materials, including $60 million in the recent budget for hard-to-recycle plastics such as soft plastics. The minister has added plastics from medical waste, mattress and tyres to the minister's priorities list. Listing these products is a signal to industry to act, and if not, then obviously government can. In October, Minister Plibersek led the Environment Minister's agreement to reform the regulation of packaging by 2025. Now, obviously there is more work to do, but we understand how important this is, not just for the environment, but actually for Australians.
Thank you, Minister Wong. Senator Pratt.
My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Housing and Homelessness, Senator Farrell. Can the minister explain how regional Australia is benefiting from the Albanese government's housing agenda?
Thank you, Senator Pratt. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President, and thank Senator Pratt for her question. It's a very important question, and it's pleasing to see some sensible policy questions being asked here today. And we know that far too many Australians are struggling to buy a home, and that Australians living in regional areas have faced some of the largest drops in housing affordability, making it increasingly hard for locals to save a sufficient deposit. After almost a decade of inaction, the Albanese government is finally showing national leadership to help get more regional Australians into their first home. The Albanese government acted to deliver on our commitment to establish the regional first home buyers guarantee by October, 3 months earlier than promised. 10,000 places will be available each financial year through the regional first home buyer guarantee to support regional first home buyers to purchasing new or existing homes with a deposit of as little as 5%. To be eligible for the regional first home buyer guarantee, applicants must be Australian citizens, must purchase outside a capital city and must demonstrate that they have been living in the region in which they are purchasing the property for at least 12 months. The regional guarantee is part of the Albanese government's ambitious housing reform agenda, Madam President, to support people into home ownership and improve the supply and the quality of social and affordable housing.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Pratt, first supplementary.
Can the minister provide an update on the number of Australians who have accessed the regional first home buyer guarantee to date?
Thank you, Senator Pratt. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President, and thank Senator Pratt for her genuine interest in this issue. The Albanese government has, of course, hit the ground running on housing and is delivering immediate action with the regional first home buyers guarantee. Since being launched early on the 1st of October this year, over 1,000 regional Australians have been assisted into 1,000 have been assisted into home ownership by this guarantee. I recently saw the story of Abby and Corin and their baby McKinnon, who live in Townsville. They, of course, had the opportunity to access this project or this program and now expect that by Christmas they will be moving into their new home.
Time has expired. Senator Pratt, second supplementary.
Thank you. Can the minister explain how this program supports the Albanese government's broader housing agenda?
Thank you, Senator Pratt. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President, and thank you, Senator Pratt. As a matter of fact, I can explain that question to you. A very sensible question. Alongside the regional first home buyer guarantee, the Albanese government will deliver the National Housing Accord. We'll deliver the $10 billion Housing Australia Future Fund. We've unlocked $575 million in funding from the National Housing Infrastructure Facility. The National Housing Supply and Affordability Council will provide independent advice to the government. We will have a national housing and homelessness plan and we will implement the Help to Buy scheme. All of our housing policies are targeted to ensure more Australians have a safe place to call home, including regional first home buyer guarantee.
Your time has expired. Senator Tyrrell.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Health and Aged Care, Senator Gallagher. The government has budgeted national urgent care clinics, with 3 promised to be established in Tasmania. Is the government going to honour that promise?
Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, President. I thank Senator Tyrrell for a question and her interest in health and health services in Tasmania. The urgent care clinics are a new model of care that we committed to in the election, and Senator Tyrrell is correct to say that there were 3 committed to in locations in Tasmania as part of that campaign, and the commitments were in Burnie, Launceston and Hobart. I understand the Premier of Tasmania has requested that the Burnie Clinic be in Devonport or the Latrobe region, which was agreed to as well. So I think, yes, the very short answer to your question is yes, they will be delivered. We are working with states and territories on finalising the model, and we'll go through that work, but the money was provided in the budget to deliver on the commitment we made, which was 50 urgent care clinics. Subsequent to making that commitment, New South Wales and Victoria have supplemented and provided funding, I think in the order of $100 million for clinics in their states, and so we've added in some money on top of the original commitment to work with them to get the model right. But it is an exciting model. I know that here in the ACT it's a different model, but we had nurse-led walk-in centres which provided a bit of the gap between emergency departments and out-of-hours care, particularly for those not needing to head to the hospital. They've been very, very popular with the local community here, and we think that model can be built upon, but obviously with general practice as key participants. So we will deliver it. We're working with states and territories to refine the model, and of course working with general practice across the country as well to make sure it aligns with their priorities as well.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Tyrrell, first supplementary.
Given the serious shortages of GPs and nursing staff in Tasmania, how are we going to ensure that these 3 clinics will be fully staffed and resourced?
Thank you, Senator Tyrrell. Minister.
Yes, so working with the relevant state is a really important part of that, so on workforce more broadly in the area of healthcare, which is why I think what works in New South Wales and Victoria will assist in the rollout of the clinics nationally as well, and how that can complement state workforce with and what they're doing with what primary care needs. But you're right, urgent care clinics on their own are not going to solve some of the issues because of the issues in remote and rural parts of the country, and that's why it has to be part of the other commitments we've made, which is, like the investment in strengthening Medicare fund, which we've got the task force in place, working with primary care, essentially rebuilding primary care, which is under so much strain, looking at the role delineation within primary care, so nurse practitioners and the work they do, and the announcement around meeting the HECS debts for health practitioners to work in the region is also part of it.
Senator Tyrrell, second supplementary.
All right, serious question now. When? When are we going to get them?
Minister.
So we've committed to them over the first term. In fact, we've profiled the money in this financial year. So the intention is to get them up and running as soon as possible, working with the jurisdictions and with primary care. It might be that there's different starts in different jurisdictions as they get rolled out, but we completely understand that this support needs to flow, but it's not something the federal government can do on its own. So the money's there, it's profiled in that first year. We're going to work in partnership with those jurisdictions that want to, and obviously those other investments, like the one to support staff that I talked about, start in January this year. The Strengthening Medicare Task Force is in place, and the grants going to GPs, the $220 million worth of grants to help them accommodate their workload, is also funded in the budget.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Van.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Infrastructure, Transport, Regional Development and Local Government, Senator Watt. The Victorian Parliamentary Budget Office says the suburban rail loop would cost $36.5 billion for Stage 1 and $125 billion for the full project. At Senate estimates on 28 October, Infrastructure Department officials gave evidence the funding available for the suburban rail loop included, and I quote, $11 billion from the state, $11 billion through some kind of value capture and $2.2 billion from the Commonwealth. Announced funding adds up to only $25 billion. In the Australian Financial Review today, Premier Andrews is quoted saying the suburban rail loop, it's fully funded and underway. Minister, what advice, other than the Australian Financial Review, has the Victorian government provided that the suburban rail loop is fully funded?
Thank you, Senator Van. Minister Wong.
Just a point of order on this. I can't remember which. Well, I don't think that that's a point of order, Senator Ayres, but I don't. I might have misheard, but it seemed to me the question does not go to a ministerial portfolio. A question about the state government's sources of advice and how the state government came to a position is not a matter for a Commonwealth minister.
Senator Birmingham, on the point of order.
President, on the point of order. Senator Van directly quoted evidence from departmental officials at Senate estimates. The question goes to assurances given to the Commonwealth. This is a government that has decided to give $2.3 billion, $2.2 billion to a project. It's perfectly reasonable to ask with this project whether in giving that budget commitment they're aware if it's fully funded or not.
Thank you. Order. Senator Wong, is it on the same point of order? Order. Order.
It just needs to be rephrased. You can't ask a
Order. Thank you. I'm going to respond to the points of order. Senator Watt can answer that question to the extent that it covers his Commonwealth responsibilities, bearing in mind that the question referenced the Victorian Budget Office and the AFR. Thank you, Senator Watt.
Thank you. Thank you, President. And yes, we do maybe need Senator Smith to run his eye over some of those questions to make sure they comply with standing orders, something that we know he takes very seriously. The suburban rail loop is a once-in-a-generation infrastructure project, and we're doing something that the former government never chose to do, which is to honour election commitments. Remember that funny old tradition of honouring your election commitments? I know that it didn't happen under you, Bob, but we actually take these things seriously. We went to the people with an election commitment to spend—
Minister Watt, please resume your seat. I'm asking those, particularly on my left, to listen to the answer in silence. Minister Watt.
Thank you,
Senator
President.
Ayres.
We went to the election with a very clear commitment to spend $2.2 billion towards early works for the suburban rail loop east, and that was on the back of the fact that the Victorian government had prepared a detailed business and investment case for the suburban rail loop, which was released last year and demonstrated a cost-benefit ratio of up to 1.7, meaning
Senator Watt, please resume your seat. Senator Mackenzie.
Point of order on relevance. Senator Watt is simply reading out the talking points that he's read out all
Senator
week.
Mackenzie, that is not a point of order.
Relevant.
Senator Mackenzie, please resume your seat. Right, well, let's just get straight to the point of order. Thank you, Senator Mackenzie.
On relevance, the question went to quoting Senate estimates evidence at our Rural and Regional Affairs Transport Committee, where departmental officials listed how much the government has actually put on the table in their budget for this project, which is directly contradicted by the Premier of Victoria.
Thank you, Senator Mackenzie. The question went to the rail project and estimates, and the minister is being relevant. Please continue, Minister.
Thank you, President. Now, I know that the opposition chooses to ignore this, but repeatedly we have made the point that the business case provided by the Victorian government demonstrates a benefit-cost ratio of up to 1.7, which means that $1.70 would be returned for every $1 investment. Now, it's interesting that the opposition is so hung up on projects and involvement with state governments and things like that, because it wasn't that long ago that the former Prime Minister, Mr Turnbull, someone I know they all choose to forget and don't pretend was never a member of their party, he announced that the Commonwealth would commit $5 billion to the Melbourne Airport Rail Link project without even speaking to the Victorian Premier first. And in March this year, the Coalition announced a $1.6 billion commitment for the direct rail line from Brisbane to the Sunshine Coast, which the Queensland Government described as a bit of a surprise, and the money appeared plucked out of the sky. So again, if we're seriously going to be relying on the Liberal and National Party to lecture people about appropriate spending of public money, then we're going to be having to wait a fair while for that.
Thank you, Minister Watt. Senator Van, first supplementary.
Thank you, President. Minister, has the Victorian government provided any evidence or assurance to the Albanese government that the Premier Andrews' controversial suburban rail loop is fully funded?
Minister Watt.
Thank you, President. I have every confidence in the Victorian government's commitment to build. That's 5 seconds.
Senator Watt, please resume your seat. When there's order on my left, I have a senator on his feet. When there is order on my left, Senator Van.
Point of order on relevance. I didn't ask about your assurances. I asked about evidence.
Thank you, Senator Van. With respect, the minister was about 5 seconds into his answer, so we'll listen. Thank you, Senator Scarr. Minister.
Thank you, President. Things have got pretty grave in the Victorian campaign when Senator Van is the person who's being turned to rescue the Liberal Party in Victoria. As I say, I have every confidence that the Victorian government will— here we go.
Senator Watt. Order. 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 Order on my left and right. I have a senator on her feet. Senator Henderson.
Madam President, that was a really inappropriate reflection on a senator in this place, and I would ask the member to withdraw that comment.
I don't believe it was a personal reflection, but if it assists the Senate, I'm sure Senator Watt will withdraw. Thank you, Senator Watt.
I withdraw.
Senator Scarr.
Because I do. Look, I know it's hard to hear facts. I know it's hard to hear about governments that actually do things by the book. I know it's hard to hear about governments that invest based on business cases. Look at all that. Remember all those business cases that didn't exist.
Senator Watt,
that's
please
what the
resume your
business
seat. Senator Watt. Senator McGrath, your incessant interjections are incredibly disorderly. And Senator McKenzie. Minister Watt.
Thank you, President. So, as I say, there's a business case that's provided by the Liberal Party and the National Party,
Senator
and
Watt.
I don't think it can be a prop because it's a blank piece of paper. I'm not sure that that constitutes a prop, because that's the extent of the business cases that we used to see from the Liberal and the National Party when it came to investing in projects. In contrast, the Victorian government has put forward a business case which demonstrates this is a good project, and we have every intention of getting behind it.
Thank you, Minister Watt. Senator Sterle. Oh, sorry, Senator Van. It's been so long since you've been on your feet. Second supplementary.
I was on my feet yesterday, so long. Minister, if the Victorian Premier is saying the suburban rail loop project is fully funded, can the minister advise the Senate on how much each government is contributing, and will the government provide a commitment that no additional Commonwealth dollars will be provided to the project?
Minister Watt.
Well, Senator Van knows full well, and I have already said that what our government has committed is $2.2 billion towards this project. We know that the Victorian government has committed funding of its own. We know that this is a project that will take some time to complete. And you know why it'll take some time to complete? It's because the former government didn't want to invest in public transport infrastructure. So now we're getting on with the job of actually investing this. It'll take till 2035 to complete the project, and that will require future budget decisions.
Minister Watt, please resume your seat. I'm asking you to listen quietly, particularly senators on my left. Minister Watt, please resume. Senator McKenzie, I've just asked for quiet and you immediately interject again. Minister Watt. Minister Watt, please continue.
Thank you, President. As I say, we know that for 10 years we had a government in Canberra that didn't want to invest in public transport infrastructure. That has changed. We now have an Albanese Labor government that is prepared to get behind big infrastructure projects that will help with public transport and relieving congestion.
Senator McGrath. Minister, please. Senator Sterle, on a point of order.
If you're still going, President, I'll wait.
Minister Watt.
So, as I say, we're getting behind public transport infrastructure in Melbourne. Remember, it was the last government that pulled out the funding for Cross River Rail in Brisbane as well. They didn't want to see public transport infrastructure there. You were the finance minister. You could have got behind this and you didn't do it.
Watt, please resume your seat. Senator Henderson.
Order. I'm misleading the Senate. The Albanese government didn't even fund the Great Ocean Road
Senator Henderson,
when they were last in government.
As I explained yesterday, there are many opportunities throughout the week in the Senate to debate points. That's a debating point. Please resume your seat. Minister Watt. Have you, Minister Watt?
So it must hurt the opposition, especially those Victorians who've fought in tooth and nail against
Senator
this project.
McGrath,
but we're going to get this
seriously.
project done because we want to relieve congestion in Melbourne, just like we want to relieve it in Brisbane and Sydney and in even provincial cities.
Minister
Senator
Watt,
McKenzie.
your time has expired. Thank you. Senator Sterle.
Okay. Thank you, President.
Yep.
My question
Order.
is to the Minister representing the Minister for Employment and Workplace Relations, Senator Watt. The Albanese government has committed to getting wages moving with its workplace relations policies, which will provide Australians with job security, gender equity and sustainable wage growth after a decade of neglect by the Liberals and Nationals. Can the Minister please outline the benefits of these policies to both Australian workers and businesses? Why is it important to get wages moving?
Minister.
Thank you, President, and thank you, Senator Sterle. Another one of our comrades over here who has spent a lot of time working for working people right across the country, and we are unapologetic for standing up for working people in this country. I was hoping that we'd end the week on a question from the government about our industrial relations reforms.
Minister Watt. Order. Thank you, Senator Scarr. I would ask those again on my left to stop with the shouting out. It is not a football match. It is question time. You are all being incredibly disorderly. Minister Watt, please continue.
Thank you, President. As I say, I'm very happy that we're ending the week of question time speaking about the government's important industrial relations policies, which are all about helping people get a decent pay rise. Because if there's one thing that drives this government,
Senator McGrath.
it's our ambition to deliver a decent pay rise for working Australians. And there are some pretty simple reasons why that is. Not just because Australian workers both need and deserve a pay rise, but also because good, sustainable wage growth is good for our economy. Our policies provide workers on lower middle incomes facing the pressure of inflation and interest rates with a way to also get pay rises. And the best way to do this is by encouraging more agreements to be made and stop a race to the bottom on wages. But Australia's bargaining system has not worked effectively for a very long time. In fact, I would say for about 10 years. Only 15% of employees are covered by an in-term agreement, and we want to make more agreements that benefit both employers and workers rather than continue the conflict that we've seen over the last 10 years. Agreements allow trade-offs and provide a more simple and tailored set of conditions than the award, which benefits small business. To give one example of how this benefits small business, Jane has been an early childhood educator for 40 years. She's now the director of an early childhood education centre in Melbourne. She is incredibly passionate about her job, but it's been a tough industry to dedicate her life to. As the director of her centre, she's faced constant struggles with staffing shortages due to low wages and conditions in the sector. Jane and her sector, along with workers in 70 other sectors in Victoria, now benefit from being part of a multi-employer agreement. And not only have they won wages up to 18% above the award, they've also won more things like planning for professional development.
Senator Sterle, first supplementary.
Thank you, President. Can the Minister outline how some of the commentary around the government's workplace relations policies is just plain wrong?
Minister Watt.
Thank you, Senator Sterle, and I'd love nothing more than to point out how some of the commentary about our policies are just plain wrong. For nearly 10 years, wages were kept low as a deliberate design feature of the previous government's management of the economy, and the scare campaigns being run now by those with vested interests are good media fodder but are completely unfounded. Let's fact-check some of the claims that have been made over the last couple of weeks by the Coalition and some of their supporters. First of all, they say there'll be coast-to-coast strikes, ignoring the fact that nothing in relation to the system for industrial action at all changes compared to the system that was under the former government, except for the fact there will now be a requirement for conciliation first, an additional requirement before industrial action occurs. There are claims being made that we'll see pattern bargaining again. There's no changes compared to the legislation that existed under the former government. There's claims that businesses will be roped into industry-wide agreements. Plain wrong, and Senator Brockman got schooled on that yesterday. The fact is that an employer can choose to be part of multi-employer bargaining.
Minister Watt, your time has expired. Senator Sterle, second supplementary.
Yes, thank you, President. Can the minister outline to the chamber the safeguards and benefits of the government's policies for small and medium-sized businesses?
Minister Watt.
I would love to do that, Senator Sterle, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk to the chamber about that. The Albanese Labor government's reforms and policies make bargaining more accessible for small and medium-sized businesses. It has been designed specifically to support those who are new to enterprise bargaining or are less equipped to navigate it. Small businesses often don't have the benefit of an HR department and can often be shut out of the benefits of enterprise bargaining that many medium and larger-sized businesses enjoy. For those small businesses who do wish to bargain together, the cooperative bargaining stream is an attractive option as it's voluntary and they can opt into the stream at any time. And isn't it ironic that the party of choice and individual choice over there doesn't want to give small businesses the choice to opt in to cooperative bargaining? They're all for choice except when it gives small businesses the choice.
Senator McGrath, exercise some self-control, please, along with Senator Henderson. Minister Watt.
And even when a small business has employees who do want to have multi-employer bargaining, before that can occur it needs majority of employees to agree. It needs the Fair Work Commission to find that there are common interests amongst those employers. This is good for workers and it's good for...
Minister Watt.
Thank you. I ask that further questions be placed on notice.
Thank you.